Um, Ruthless. I was the county sheriff here in Washington County, Maine for close to 20 years. Retired 5 years back. I agreed to record this only because there's still a report sitting in the archives that doesn't add up, and I'd rather tell it myself than have someone else make a ghost story out of it. You'll hear people around here mention the wrong house call. They usually make it sound like small-town folklore, but it started as a standard missing person welfare check on a foggy October morning in 1998. I was on night rotation that week. Just me and one deputy covering about 600 square miles of coastline, half of it dirt roads and private lanes. The incident log says 0317 hours, dispatch channel 2. The caller identified herself as Eva Norton, registered nurse at Down East General. She lived alone on the South Peninsula, about a mile off Route 92. Her voice came through steady at first, then strained. She said someone was knocking on her windows, both front and back at once, and she didn't want to make a fuss if it was just the wind off the bay. Before the dispatcher could get her to stay on the line, Eva said one more thing. "I think they've got the wrong house." Then the call dropped. I was parked near Machiasport when the radio relay came through. The roads out that way twist between tree lines that kill your radio in patches. It's not unusual to lose a signal, but the recording caught something I didn't hear live. After she says wrong house, you can make out a faint knock 3 times, then a long inhale. I'd have written that off as interference if the timing hadn't been so exact. I logged my location and started toward her address. It's maybe a 30-minute drive if the fog stays high. That night, it didn't. Visibility dropped under 50 yards by the time I hit the turnoff for Heron Road. I kept my high beams low to avoid glare, rolled the window down a crack. The temperature had fallen to 42 degrees, enough for condensation to bead on the mirror glass inside the truck. For the record, which was a relief. The living room was tidy, TV off, lights on low. A nurse's tote bag rested by the hallway table. One mug on the counter, steam long gone cold. I called out again, checked corners, followed the standard sweep pattern. Every window in that house was sealed with masking tape, edges reinforced over old layers, like she'd done it every season. That's not unusual for coastal homes. People tape glass before storms to stop cracks from spreading. But she'd done the interior sides only, no exterior reinforcement, like she was sealing something in. I found condensation on the bathroom mirror. Room temperature said 58 degrees, too cold for fresh fog. I wiped a corner with my sleeve. Underneath the haze, someone had drawn 3 parallel lines in the glass. Looked like fingers dragged slow. I didn't touch them. I just noted it. Simmons at this point radio contact with dispatch cut again. Static, then a short burst of what sounded like my own voice reading the case code back to me. That's been explained since as cross-channel bleed from a training tape archived on the same frequency. Maybe so, but I'd like you to note that those tapes hadn't been played in over a decade. Outside, I checked the porch and found sand packed thick into one plank near the top step. Not footprints exactly, more like a single impression where someone had stood heavy and pivoted. The nearest beach access is almost half a mile downhill. There's no reason for wet sand that far up. Standard practice says you clear the property, report in, and wait for daylight if the subject's not found. I tried to do that. Then the cruiser's passenger side window fogged from the inside while the engine was off. 3 spots, same height, same spacing as knuckles. I can't was supernatural. I can't say I heard 3 knocks, identical spacing, identical tone, as if someone stood right there and tested the glass. When I opened the door, the fog was too thick to see beyond the hood ornament. Nothing moved. The sound stopped. I went back to the porch, intending still have the time code written in my notes. You can see the pen pressure spike right there, like my hand hesitated. I never found Eva Norton. Her vehicle stayed in the drive, keys inside. No sign of struggle, no sign of departure. House locked behind me when I left, though I don't remember locking it. What happened after that is why I'm talking now. Over the next 7 nights, 3 more calls came in, same hour, same phrase. Wrong house. Different voices, all untraceable. And when I went back to that stretch of coast, every house had its windows taped from the inside. I'm going to explain everything I can remember about those nights, step by step, like a case file. I don't expect you to believe me. Just listen to the facts. The paperwork ends where the tide begins. The official report says I went back to the Norton residence at 6:45 the following morning, October 14th, 1998. The fog hadn't cleared overnight. It just changed texture. Thicker inland, patchy near the shore. The sun looked like a coin pressed behind gauze. I brought Deputy Frank Greeley with me this time. Frank had been on the force about 4 years back then. Good man, steady. I told him to treat it like a missing person check, nothing more. We didn't want the neighbors calling in a panic over ghost stories, which is how things get out of hand around here. The gravel on her driveway was untouched since I'd been there. No new tire marks, no footprints. Eva's car was still in place. I remember tapping the hood with my hand. It was cold, same as the air. When we entered the house, the generator was still running, though fuel levels said it should have quit sometime during the night. The lights flickered like before. The coffee mug was still half full. No sign of disturbance. Frank took photographs, checked windows, did everything by the book. I noticed something I hadn't logged properly the night before. On every interior window, there were faint impressions in the masking tape. 3 small dents side by side, like someone had pressed fingertips through from the inside, but stopped short of breaking the surface. I told him not to touch them, just photograph and mark. He did. I called dispatch for confirmation on Eva's last outgoing call records. Nothing unusual, just the 317 call to our line. But the operator mentioned something else. "Sheriff," she said, "it's strange, the recording we saved for that night. It's 31 minutes long. It should have been under 2. They played a snippet over the line. After Eva's voice cuts out, there's dead air, then background static that sounds like tide movement, rhythmic, faint. And every 30 seconds, a knock, 3 times. I don't know how that could happen unless the mic stayed open, but the call log shows disconnect at 3:17:42. You can check it yourself. We canvassed neighbors next. Closest house about a quarter mile up, retired couple, the Fosters. They said they hadn't heard a thing, but their porch light burned out around 3 and came back on an hour later by itself. Happens, they said. Bad wiring. They also mentioned something odd. Said their cat had started staring at their front window, like there was someone standing outside. Now, I don't put much stock in animals sensing what people can't. But you learn not to ignore patterns. We checked the shoreline below Eva's house. The tide line was high for that hour. Wet sand reached almost to the grass. That part of the coast is usually calm unless there's a storm, and there hadn't been one for a week. Frank pointed out something I still can't explain. About 10 feet down the slope in the wet sand, there were tracks, boot prints, but they started halfway down and ended in the middle of the shore. No approach from either direction. Just 8 prints forming a straight line into the water, then nothing. We measured them, size 11, heavy tread. Same type issued with our uniform boots, but not mine and not Frank's. The spacing suggested someone walking slowly, deliberately. He joked, "Maybe it's one of yours sleepwalking." I didn't answer. Back inside the house, Frank went over every room again. No fingerprints except Eva's on surfaces. But in the bathroom, the mirror was clear. No condensation now, but the same 3 faint streaks still visible, etched somehow into the surface coating. When light hit at an angle, you could see salt crystals clinging there. I checked the porch again. The sand mark from last night was gone, boards dry, nothing disturbed. I remember feeling relieved for a second, like the evidence had finally agreed with reason. That's when Frank called from the kitchen. He was standing by the sink window. "Sheriff, you seeing this?" he said. Outside at the far tree line, maybe 50 yards away, something flashed, just for a heartbeat. I thought it was a reflection off metal, maybe a parked car, but there's no road that close. We watched. Nothing. Then it flashed again, lower this time, like light through moving water. We stepped outside. The air smelled of brine and copper. The generator sputtered once and went quiet. In the silence that followed, I could hear it clearly, a faint, rhythmic sound, like wet rope slapping wood. Not fast, steady. Frank whispered, "You hear that?" I nodded, motioned for quiet. The noise kept time. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats, pause. It seemed to come from the direction of the shore. We walked down together. The sand was wet again, though the tide hadn't come in yet, and when the light flashed a 3rd time, we both saw it. A reflection. Not on the surface of the water, but beneath it. Like a row of submerged lanterns. We stood there maybe 30 seconds, no one speaking. Then the lights went out, clean, instant, and the air temperature dropped hard enough to make both our breath show white. That was when my radio clicked on by itself. Channel open, no voice, just ambient hiss. Then, faintly, through the static, my own voice from the previous night saying, "Copy. Wrong house." Frank looked at me, eyebrows tight. "That a playback?" "No," I said. "This unit doesn't record." He said, "Then how?" Before he finished, the radio cut off. We didn't talk much after that. Logged what we saw, took photos that came out blank, fogged over according to the lab. I turned the generator off completely, locked the door, left the key in evidence. On the drive back, Frank kept checking the rearview mirror. I asked him once if he was all right. He said, "Just thought I saw headlights behind us." There weren't any roads back there, only the bay. By noon, the call recording from dispatch vanished from the system. They blamed an archive transfer error. Happens sometimes. But the timestamp line stayed. 0317, duration 31 minutes. Unplayable file. I filed my report anyway. Plain facts, no theories. No subject located, no evidence of struggle, unknown origin of audio anomalies. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. That night, just before my shift ended, the phone in the station rang. No caller ID, just blank. I answered. Dead air. Then, a single knock, 3 times, right against the line, like someone tapping the receiver. I said nothing. Then a woman's voice, calm and close. "Sheriff, you came to the wrong house." I checked the clock. 3:17. Exactly. I didn't sleep that morning. I sat in the station break room until daylight, listening to the wall clock drag each minute past the same spot. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, routine fatigue, coincidence stacked on coincidence. You learn early in this job that if you start connecting the wrong dots, you'll see patterns everywhere. Still, I couldn't shake the sound of those 3 knocks. At 1400 hours, I logged another welfare check on the Norton residence. No deputy this time. I didn't want chatter spreading through the department that I was chasing phantoms on my last year before retirement. The drive out felt different in daylight. Fog lifted, sky flat and colorless. The bay stretched out calm and bright enough to hurt the eyes. It should have felt safe, but it didn't. The kind of quiet you get after a snow, except it hadn't snowed. No birds, no engine noise, nothing. Even the generator that had been running steady the day before was dead. The door was still locked. When I stepped inside, the air smelled faintly metallic. I checked rooms in sequence. Nothing moved. Then I noticed something new. On the kitchen table, beside Eva's tote bag, lay a small pile of sea glass. 5 pieces, pale green. They hadn't been there before. The edges were wet. I put on gloves, bagged the glass, tagged it, routine. That's when I realized the generator plug was still connected, but the cable had been chewed clean through. No scorch marks, no tearing, just a smooth slice as if cut by a machine. The wire ends weren't frayed, they were polished. I don't believe in superstition, but I do believe in people. And people don't leave neat work like that behind when they're running scared. In the living room, the wall clock had stopped at 3:17. I reset it, wound the dial, and the second hand started again. I made a note. When I turned toward the hallway, the floorboards popped under my boot. It was an old house, so I didn't think much of it until I realized the sound hadn't come from under me. It came from the wall. 3 sharp pops, measured like knuckles on plaster. I called out, "Sheriff's office." No response. I tapped the wall back once. It answered, same rhythm, 3 beats. I stood there a long minute listening. The ticking clock started again behind me, steady now. I told myself sound travels weird in these old places. Hollow joists, air ducts, even rodents can echo like footsteps. I almost believed that until I saw the light shift across the floorboards. The reflection came from the window glass, but not from anything outside. It was moving within the glass itself, dim pulses, greenish white, sliding slowly from one side to the other like something drifting underwater. I stepped closer. The air temperature near that window was colder by at least 10 degrees. My breath showed faintly. When I got within arm's reach, the light dimmed. For a second, the surface of the glass rippled, as if something on the other side had exhaled. "Eva," I said before thinking. Nothing. Then, just beneath my voice, I heard a second breath. It wasn't echo. It had rhythm, shape, close, human. I backed off a step. The phone on the wall rang once and went dead. The same as the first night. I picked it up anyway, more out of reflex than reason. No dial tone, just a faint hiss, like the sound of a conch shell held to your ear. I listened. Through that hiss came a voice so soft I almost missed it. "Not real. Real. Not real." I froze. The voice sounded like mine. I tried the portable radio. It came alive instantly, full signal. "County Dispatch, this is 3A12 checking in on Norton case. Do you copy?" Silence. Then a burst of static so loud it made me flinch. Underneath it, a word, hard to catch, muffled, but I could swear it was my last name. I stepped back onto the porch, keying the mic again. "Say again?" Nothing. That's when I saw the footprints. They started at the end of the porch stairs and trailed out toward the path leading down to the shore. Not like the ones we'd seen before. These were clearer, fresh, filled with moisture as if pressed into damp sand, but the porch boards were dry. Each print pointed seaward. I followed them. Halfway down the path, the air changed. You know that pressure drop before a storm? Your ears pop slightly. Every sound feels padded. That's what it felt like. The trees leaned inland as if pulled by something below. I stopped, scanned the ground. The prints kept going straight, ending abruptly in front of a stand of spruce. No continuation, no turning, just gone. I radioed again. "Dispatch, I'm at the shoreline. You reading me?" Static. When I turned back toward the house, I noticed the window I'd been standing by earlier. It was fogged again, even from this distance. And I swear I saw movement, just a shift, like someone passing behind the curtain. But the curtains weren't drawn. I walked fast back up the path, gun hand loose but ready. The porch door was open now. I hadn't left it that way. I called out again, "Sheriff's office!" and stepped inside. The house was silent. But the smell was different, stronger, like seaweed left to dry on rocks. In the living room, the clock had stopped again. Same time, 3:17. I stared at it, felt my pulse sink to the frozen second hand. Then something knocked from the back hallway, 3 times. I moved toward it, slow and steady. The sound came from the laundry room. The door there was closed. The handle was cold, metal slick under my fingers. I eased it open. The light flickered once, twice, and held. The room was empty except for the washer, the dryer, and a mirror propped against the far wall, the kind used in hall closets. It hadn't been there before. Its surface was dull with moisture. I stepped closer. The reflection showed the room as it should be, bare, quiet. But the me inside the mirror wasn't moving right. My reflection's mouth was open, like it was trying to speak, but I couldn't hear anything. Then, faintly, it came through the static in my radio, so low I could barely make it out. "Sheriff, wrong house." I turned, expecting someone behind me. Nothing. When I looked back, the mirror was clear, my reflection normal. The radio was silent. I backed out, closed the door, logged everything as visual disturbance, possible reflection artifact. I knew how that would read. No one files a report saying the mirror talked. That night, I sat at the station replaying the audio from my body mic. I expected nothing, probably just noise. But 38 minutes in, after I say, "Dispatch reading me," there's another voice layered under mine. The waveform shows it. 3 syllables, quiet but clear. "Come back." I don't know whose voice that was, but I know it wasn't Eva's. And I know I went back. I filed the second report the same night, word for word, and didn't look at it again for almost a week. Sometimes that's the only way you stay sane in this job. You treat every event like paperwork until it stops feeling personal. 2 nights later, I was in the records office trying to square up end-of-month logs. When you've done that work long enough, you start to recognize handwriting at a glance. I was checking Eva Norton's old calls for any prior complaints, noises, break-ins, anything. The computer database was still new back then, so half of it lived on paper. I pulled her card file and found something strange. 2 reports stamped with the same date, same time, but different handwriting. Both logged at 3:17. Both listed her as the caller. Both described unknown knocking. One had my initials. The other had the initials of a deputy who hadn't been on duty in 5 years. I went back through storage, checking the old ledgers. The entry matched one from 1993. That deputy had retired after a breakdown, claimed the radio kept repeating calls that never came in. At the time, we wrote it off as stress. But the numbers matched. Same house code, same time, same wording. I brought it up with the new dispatcher, a young guy named Perry. He'd heard the stories, laughed them off, said he'd heard the locals joke about the tide clock. Then he pulled up the digital log and frowned. "That's odd," he said. "The system duplicated last night's file again." Same case ID. It's like it's rewriting itself. That's when I decided to pull the dispatch tapes myself. We kept a metal shoebox of old cassettes under the counter. Most nights it just collected dust. I found the one marked October 14th, 1998, labeled Norton Call. When I played it, the first 2 minutes were what I remembered. Eva's voice, calm but nervous. Then the static swell. Then 30 minutes of silence, followed by my own voice asking if anyone copied. The timestamp was right, but I never transmitted then. I slowed the tape speed, listening close. Every 30 seconds there was a low click, 3 beats, and what sounded like wind over an open mic. Between those beats there was whispering. I couldn't make it out clearly, but it sounded procedural, like someone reading a code or report lines. "Most noises are wind," the whisper said once, exactly the phrase we use at training. I stopped the tape, rewound, and played it again. Same cadence, same words. That's when I noticed the reflection off the office window, my own shape framed against the night outside. For a second I could have sworn the light from the street lamps was rippling, like looking through water. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself I was tired, that I was letting local folklore and repetition get to me. The next morning I drove out to the property one more time just to clear my conscience. The fog was back, thicker than before. When I reached the end of Heron Road, I noticed something immediately. Every house along that stretch, about 9 in total, had masking tape on the windows now. Not just Eva's. I stopped by the Foster residence again. They opened the door halfway, wouldn't look me in the eye. Mrs. Foster said they'd had visitors during the night. I asked what kind. She said they never saw them, only heard them. 3 knocks, same hour. They thought it was kids at first, but when they looked outside, the road was empty. They didn't call it in because, quote, "We don't say that name after dark." "What name?" I asked. She just shook her head. "You know which one." I didn't press her. When I got back to Eva's place, I stayed in the truck for a while, engine idling. The air pressure in my ears felt off again. I checked my watch. 3:12. I hadn't realized how late it was. I stepped out, flashlight in hand. The front door was closed, taped around the edges with new strips, fresh tape, still tacky. I pulled a corner up, pushed inside. The house smelled faintly of seawater. The floorboards were damp in patches. The wall clock on the far side ticked quietly, but the second hand wasn't moving. It just vibrated against the same notch. When I turned, the reflection in the kitchen window showed me standing alone. Behind me, just for an instant, there was another figure. It wasn't distinct. Human height, shoulders narrow, head slightly tilted like someone trying to see past me. I spun around. Nothing. I turned back to the window. The figure was gone, but my reflection was off. The position of my head didn't match what I was doing. It was facing the wrong way. My heart rate jumped. I felt my pulse in my ears. I blinked, stepped forward. The reflection corrected itself. Perfectly normal. Then the radio on my shoulder crackled. County dispatch, routine signal check. Copy? Copy, I said, voice steady. Static. Then softly, the same voice, mine but not quite right, replied, not real. Real. Not real. I left immediately after that. Drove straight back to the station, logged everything. The tape from the cruiser dash cam came back blank. 37 minutes of gray noise, no image, no sound. I don't know what's on that stretch of coast, but it's something that knows procedure better than I do. It repeats it back, perfectly. That week we started getting other calls. Different addresses, same report. Knocking on glass, wrong house, 3:17 a.m. I sent deputies each time, different people, same outcome. No subject, no prints, no evidence. Every house faced the bay. I started mapping the locations. When I drew a line between them, it curved like the shape of that submerged road I'd seen in the fog. The line ended exactly at Eva Norton's home. The deputy who'd helped me the first night, Frank, he wouldn't go back there. Said he was hearing tapping in his house now. Always 3 beats, always around the same time. He moved inland 2 months later. That's when I realized it wasn't about Eva anymore. Whatever had started there was moving along the shoreline, house by house, choosing. I wish I could tell you what it wants, but I still don't know. I only know the pattern, and I know that every time I hear 3 knocks, I stop breathing without meaning to. Because once you hear it, you can't unlearn the rhythm. That was the beginning of the spiral. By the 4th night, it wasn't about evidence anymore. It was about pattern recognition. I'd built my whole career on cause and effect, learning how people lie, how they fold under routine questioning. But the facts I had were clean. Too clean. Calls at 3:17, everyone the same. No forced entries, no disturbances. Just the line dropping and that phrase, wrong house. I pulled the logbooks again, cross-referenced power outages, tide schedules, even moon phases. All irrelevant. Then I noticed something else. Every single address sat within 100 yards of where the old coastal road used to run before the sea took it in 1937. I found the survey maps in storage, yellow with age. That submerged road curved out into the bay and came back toward the shore exactly where Eva's house stood. It wasn't superstition anymore. It was geometry. I spent the next day interviewing anyone who would talk. Most didn't. The few who did kept their answers short. One fisherman, a man named Blodgett, told me that when he was a boy, his father used to tape their windows during fog season. Stops the glass from breathing, he said. When I asked what that meant, he just stared past me and muttered, "You can hear it inhale before it knocks." At this point, sleep wasn't an option. I kept hearing faint tapping when the station was quiet, always 3 beats, the same spacing. I convinced myself it was heating pipes or branches. Maybe I even believed that for a while. I started setting up a recorder in my office overnight. At first, it caught nothing but static. Then, on the 3rd night at exactly 3:17, there was a sound like wet fingertips brushing glass, followed by my own voice whispering, "Copy. Wrong house." I hadn't spoken. The tape picked it up anyway. I listened to that part a dozen times. The background hum wasn't random. It was a rhythm. When I slowed it down, it sounded almost like breathing underwater. The next day, I called the state communications office to check for interference. They said no frequencies in our range matched that pattern. Probably bleed over from maritime bands, they told me. Except The Coast Guard logs showed silence in that window. Complete radio dead zone. That night, I drove back to the Norton place. I don't know why. Maybe it's the same instinct that makes you reread an old report looking for the line you missed. The fog was thicker than ever. When I parked, I left the headlights on low. The beam hit the porch rail, the front door, and a stretch of air that looked almost solid, like a film hung there, catching the light. Inside, the smell of salt was stronger. The tape around the windows had peeled at the corners as if something had pushed against it from outside. I checked the kitchen clock. Still 3:17. I wound it backward, let it tick forward once, and it stopped again on the same mark. Then the radio on my shoulder came alive without me touching it. "Sheriff," my own voice. "Turn around." I froze. The air behind me felt colder. When I turned, the hallway mirror I'd seen before was now standing in the living room. No frame, just glass propped against the wall. The surface looked wet. I raised the flashlight. My reflection looked normal except for the mouth. It was moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. Then the sound faded into the room itself. Not real. Real. Not real. I stepped closer. My reflection stopped moving but didn't align exactly. The head tilt was wrong by a few degrees. My radio hissed again, and a second voice, female this time, calm, close, spoke over it. "You came to the wrong house." The front door slammed shut behind me. I spun, gun out, heart hammering. The air was still. No breeze. No draft strong enough to move that door. I backed away from the mirror toward the exit. As I did, the reflection in the glass stayed still. Didn't mimic me. Didn't move at all. Then, it blinked. I don't remember leaving the house. I remember being in the truck, hands shaking on the wheel, engine already running. My body cam caught nothing but static for the next 15 minutes. When I got back to the station, the clock above the evidence lockers read 3:17. It had stopped. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion. I handed the recorder over to the county analyst, asked him to clean the audio. He called me that evening. "You should hear this," he said. "It's not static. It's a voice repeating a phrase, low frequency. You can't hear it without filtering." "What's it saying?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's saying your name, Sheriff." That when I stopped Trekker. You can't file paperwork against air and light, but it didn't stop. Every night, 3:17, the tapping moved. First in my office window, then at home. 3 precise knocks, always the same rhythm. Not long after, I found damp sand on the inside sill of my living room window, tiny ridges shaped like tread marks. My father's old chair sat across from it, facing outward. The cushion was wet, just the seat. I taped the window edges with masking tape. It's what we all do here now. You tape the seams, you keep the glass from breathing. Sometimes I think I hear Eva's voice through the static, calling out, calm as ever. They've got the wrong house. Maybe she's right. Maybe it's looking for the right one. It's hard to mark the night when things stopped feeling like work and started feeling like something else. There isn't a single call or piece of evidence that says, here's where the case became something you can't write down. I just remember that one morning I found a note on my own desk, typed, dated, and signed with my initials. The report described a welfare check I hadn't done yet. It said, subject located, condition unknown, site secured at 3:17. I thought someone was messing with me. I even joked about it in briefing, asked if one of the new deputies was trying to spook the old man. No one laughed. One of them just asked if I'd been back out to the peninsula lately. I said no. He said maybe I should check the Norton place one more time. He said it like an instruction, not a question. By the time I reached the end of the road, fog covered everything from the treetops down. The temperature read 41 degrees. I remember that number because the truck thermometer started flashing, stuck, flashing, like it was reading the same second over and over. The tape on the window seams of every house I passed fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. Not tearing loose, just breathing. At Eva's, the generator was gone. No hum, no light. I kept the engine running, headlights pointing straight at the porch. The reflection from the fog made the house look doubled, like there was a second one layered faintly behind it. I walked to the door, touched the handle. Cold metal, same as always. When I pushed it open, the interior light came on by itself. I remember noting that detail in my head, like a professional reflex, light source activated on entry. The living room was rearranged. Furniture moved a few inches outward from the walls, like someone had been inspecting the baseboards. The mirror that used to sit in the hallway was gone again. In its place was the sound of dripping, soft and steady. Drip, drip. I followed it into the kitchen. A puddle had formed under the table, seawater by the smell of it. No leak in the ceiling, no pipe burst. Just that puddle, rippling faintly like something breathing under it. My radio came alive. "Sheriff?" The voice was mine, older, slower. "You need to leave." I froze, keyed the mic. "Who is this?" Silence. Then, same voice. "They know your name now." The sound cut. I checked my recorder, still running. The digital clock on it blinked 3:17 exactly. Then the windows started tapping. All of them. Slow, measured. 3 knocks, pause. 3 knocks, pause. The tape around the panes stretched inward like it was being pulled from outside. The sound filled the house, wood, glass, air, all vibrating in that same rhythm. I backed into the hallway, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dispatch, I need units on Heron Road now." The radio answered, but the tone was wrong. Not static, not feedback, more like a voice trying to imitate one. "Units inbound," it said, too even, too quiet. "Stay where you are." Something in me decided to listen. I sat in the chair by the window, the one that used to face the bay. The knocking slowed, softened, then stopped. For a few seconds I thought maybe it had passed. Then I heard the sound of breathing, just one long inhale, not from outside, but inside the wall. The back door opened by itself. I could see fog curling in, low to the floor. Through it, faint points of light, like lanterns, moved in a line through the yard, heading toward the water, the same formation I'd seen under the bay weeks before. I followed them. I don't know why. Maybe because they looked deliberate, purposeful. Maybe because I was tired of not knowing. They led me down to the shore, then stopped at the edge where sand met water. For a second, I saw what looked like a road, stone, slick, running straight out beneath the tide. I stepped closer, flashlight steady on the surface. Beneath the waterline, maybe 6 feet down, there were shapes. People, maybe, standing upright, motionless. Not floating, just standing. The light hit their faces wrong, bending across the surface, but I could swear one of them was wearing a deputy's uniform. The sound came again, 3 knocks, deep, muffled from below. I don't know if it was through the ground or the water. My radio whispered, "You're standing on it." That's when the road vanished. "Shh," The tide surged up my boots, cold enough to burn. I stumbled back, fell to my knees. The flashlight hit the water and went out. For a second, total dark. Then, somewhere in the distance, I heard the faint creak of a door closing. When I got back to the truck, the dashboard clock read 3:18. Only a minute had passed. I drove straight home, didn't go to the station, didn't call dispatch. When dawn came, I found wet sand on my living room floor again. This time the pattern was clearer. Boot prints, same size, same tread as the ones by the shore. They led from the window to the chair, stopped, then turned back toward the window. I sat down in that chair and listened. No knocks, just the faintest sound of breathing in the walls, like something trying to sync with mine. After that night, I started hearing about other houses, further inland now. Families saying they'd taped their windows. No one reporting to us officially, but word got around. Every case started the same way. A noise complaint at 3:17, then silence. I realized whatever this was, it wasn't staying by the coast. It was moving. I kept a recorder running every night. The last file I played before I stopped trying had only one thing on it, my own voice, half asleep, saying, "Most noises are wind. Most shapes are weather." Then, a woman's voice right after mine whispering, "Not anymore." That's when I understood. It wasn't just in the house. It was in the recordings, in the signal itself. And if it could learn a voice, it could travel through one. You spend enough nights staring at a screen of static, and you start to see motion that isn't there. That's what I told myself when I caught the reflection moving behind my own shoulder on the monitor. But the longer I watched, the more I realized it wasn't the reflection moving wrong, it was me. The files from those nights were multiplying on the server, all with the same timestamp, 3:17. Same size, same name, same length, 31 minutes. When I opened one, it wasn't the same as the others. The first 30 seconds sounded like my office, paper, chair, clock tick. Then another voice began speaking softly, as if dictating a report. "Sheriff Daniel Holt," it said, my full name which I never used in recordings. "Final entry. Case terminated. Condition. Mirrored." Then a knock, 3 times. The next day I printed every log from those tapes. The printer jammed halfway through, spitting out blank pages with faint saltwater stains. You could smell the ocean on them. At that point, I hadn't been to my home in 3 days. I didn't want to. But the call came through again that night, just before I was supposed to sign off. Dispatcher's line, no caller ID. I picked up expecting static. Instead, it was my deputy, Frank. His voice was low, shaking. "Sheriff," he said, "I saw her." "Who?" "The nurse. Eva. She's standing in my driveway." The line went dead before I could answer. I drove straight to his place. His cruiser was there, door open, engine still running. The radio emitted a steady hiss. Frank was gone. No footprints, just wet sand where the pavement should have been dry. The air smelled like the bay. Inside his house, the lights flickered the same way they had in Eva's. I checked every room. Empty. Except for one thing. The mirror in the hallway was turned to face the wall. But in its corner, someone had written in chalk, "Not real. Real. Not real." I turned the mirror over. My flashlight beam hit the glass. What I saw looked like the station evidence room behind me, but not the way it was supposed to. There was movement in that reflection, like someone pacing between shelves. I couldn't hear anything at first. Then the radio on my shoulder hissed and came alive. "Sheriff," a voice said, calm, familiar, close. "Who is this?" "You know me," it said. "I don't think I do." "Yes, you do. You called me Eva." I froze. "You're not Eva," I said. The voice paused, then soft. "Neither are you." Something in the mirror leaned forward. I took one step back, tripped over the threshold. The glass stayed still, but my reflection didn't. It turned its head to the side like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then the light flickered, and the image in the mirror changed. It wasn't the house anymore. It was my office, my desk, my chair. And sitting in that chair was me. Only my reflection was still moving while I stood frozen. I fired once, out of panic. The bullet cracked the corner of the glass, splintering it but not shattering it. The radio screamed feedback so loud I dropped to my knees. I remember yelling for it to stop, then silence. When I looked again, the mirror was empty, just fogged glass, condensation trickling down the crack I'd made. I touched it, cold. My fingerprint stayed behind, but it was reversed, on the inside. I don't remember driving back to the station, but when I got there, the lights were already on. The tape deck was spinning, recording nothing. And on my desk sat my father's old badge, the one I'd buried with him. The metal was cold, damp, and marked with a single print. Mine. That's when I knew what the thing wanted. It didn't want a place. It wanted a record. It wanted a voice. It wanted to be documented so it could exist wherever the record was played. You can call it hallucination, trauma, whatever makes you feel better. But I'll tell you what I tell myself. The moment I started writing it down, I gave it an address. I gave it mine. Now, every time I speak about it, every time I replay the recordings, the knocks come back. Always the same. 3 beats. Pause. Sometimes when I play back these tapes, I hear breathing between the static. Not mine. Lower, slower, patient. And when I stop the tape, the sound keeps going. This will be my final entry. I'm making it on the department issue microcassette, the kind we used for incident interviews before everything went digital. If anyone listens to this, file it wherever you keep the other unsolveds. Call it Heron Road Supplemental. I don't expect this to clear anything up. I'm just trying to leave a record that sounds like me before whatever's been answering decides it can do a better job. Date doesn't matter. Time, 3:17 a.m. again. The clocks stopped trying to argue about it. Weather, clear, calm, no fog visible through the window. Still smells like salt. I'm home. I haven't been to the station in 2 days. They can handle the shift without me. The power's out across the county, but my tape deck runs on batteries. The light from the porch is steady, steady enough to cast shadows on the walls that don't move when I do. The knocks started 40 minutes ago. Same rhythm. 3, pause, 3. They're at the windows first, then the hallway mirror, then the radio. The sound travels like it's searching for the right frequency. You can hear it if you listen close. It's polite. Never pounds, never rushes. Just waits. I checked the perimeter. No footprints. Ground dry. When I came back inside, the chair across from me was turned toward the window. I didn't move it. It's my father's chair. He used to sit there on storm nights mumbling that the sea talks through the glass. I used to laugh at him. Now I sit here because there's nowhere else to go. The tape will pick up a hum now and then. That's not interference. That's it, breathing. You'll hear it between my words. I've been thinking about Eva, about Frank, about everyone who called in that same phrase. I think they were warning me. Wrong house. It wasn't a plea. It was instruction. Don't open the door. Don't answer. Because once you do, the house stops belonging to you. I tried to map the locations again tonight, but the ink ran under my fingers. Salt water, not sweat. When it dried, the lines looked like veins. Every line led back here. Sometimes I think I can still see the lights under the bay from this window, small, moving in pairs. They come and go with the tide, but I don't think they're buoys anymore. I think they're addresses, shifting under the surface until they find a match. You spend enough years filing reports, you start believing everything can be typed into order. But this doesn't care about order. It just wants a witness. That's what the knocks are. An invitation to testify. There it is again. Same spot, right next to the tape deck. I'm not going to turn around this time. If it needs my name, it already has it. For the record, there was no break-in, no suspect, no evidence of a crime beyond the sound itself. And yet, the air tastes like iron. There's condensation forming on the inside of the glass. My breath isn't fogging it. Something else is. I keep telling myself the mantra, most noises are wind, most shapes are weather. But it's learned that one too. I heard it whisper it back last night through the radio. Perfect cadence. My own voice slowed down. Maybe this is what happens when a case runs too long. Maybe you start echoing yourself until you forget which side of the story you're on. Hear that? That's it, trying the signal again. Each burst shorter, closer. I'll let it play. Maybe you'll catch what it says. Sheriff. Pause. Sheriff, come home. I don't have a home left. Just walls that remember me talking. I taped every window like everyone else, but one strip keeps peeling loose near the corner. The sound it makes is soft, like breath through teeth. If I press it back, the tape lifts again after a few seconds. It's waiting for me to stop. I won't stop. If you're listening to this and you hear the knocks, don't answer. Don't repeat the phrases you hear. Don't try to record them. The recording is how it moves. When the tape ends, you'll probably hear silence. If you hear something else, breathing, a hum, a whisper, that's not this deck. That's it, listening to you. I'm setting the microphone down on the windowsill now. I want you to hear what it sounds like when it finds its way through. You'll know the pattern. 3 knocks, pause. 3 knocks, pause. Not real, real, not real. The light outside just went out. The reflection in the window is still here, though. It's standing behind me. I'm not going to turn around. I think that's how it finishes things, when you look. If you find this tape, burn it. Don't digitize it. Don't let it play through a speaker. Sound carries further than you think. This is Sheriff Daniel Holt, Washington County. End of report. And if you're hearing this, it already knows you. You don't believe me, do you?